Good morning. Welcome. Good morning. My name is Claire Schaefer-Olekshak. I'm the Executive Director of Sustain Dane. I use the pronouns she and her. Welcome to the Sustain Dane Summit. Welcome to the 2023 Summit. At the Summit, we are taking a break from our everyday projects today. We're letting ourselves think big, reflect, be inspired, connect with each other. And then we're going to do this so that we can go out and make an even more significant impact, accelerating environmental health and social well-being for all. I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. I recognize that we are on the traditional territory of the Ho-Chunk people. I acknowledge that the systemic inequity existing today stems directly from the past crimes against the Ho-Chunk people. The Ho-Chunk tribe has lived here for over 12,000 years, and I celebrate their incredible resilience and strength. This is the 15th annual Sustain Dane Summit. 15. Can I please get a show of hands of who is a returning Sustain Dane Summit attendee? Okay, all right, keep them up high. Great. All right, if you've been to 5 or more summits, keep the hands up. Okay, we got some. What about 10 or more years? Okay, there we go, 10 or more years. Great. All right, other side. Who is here for the first time? Woo, all right, wonderful. Well, it is great to have you all here. I look forward to hearing about the connections you guys are going to make with each other as well. And I love seeing all of your faces because I've worked with you in many different spaces. And you guys are amplifying sustainability at work, at home, in schools, across the community. And all of that together is just beautiful to see right here. A big thank you to our partners, our members and sponsors who make the summit and all of the programs and good work of Sustain Dane possible. Our top sponsors include the City of Madison, Community Shares of Wisconsin, and MG&E. I would also like to thank our forest, tree, and leaf level members and additional sponsors and our organizational partners. It is a joy and an honor to work in collaboration with each of you, and your commitment to sustainability is inspiring. I invite everyone to take time to look at the recognition signage posters and the recognition booklets that we have out. We'll also send a link to this in the follow-up email that will include recordings of the programs. There's a place for everyone in the Sustain Dane network and the community, and together we're learning, connecting, and taking action. Let's think about ways we can support each other and that we can support organizations that value sustainability. Sustain Dane's vision is a thriving and inclusive community with a sustainable environment and economy that we are proud to pass on to future generations. Our mission is to inspire, connect, and support people to accelerate equity and sustainable actions for community well-being. And as I reflect on this past year, I'm really proud of the work that we are all doing to move this mission and this vision forward. I'm in awe of the skills that you're bringing, the compassion, the innovation of you all, of this whole community that we have here. And I also acknowledge that we have a lot of work ahead. This summer, the Canadian wildfires were a particular pivotal moment for feeling that impact of climate change. It also emphasized the interconnection that we have, our systems globally and locally that are interconnected, and the interconnections of health and equity and well-being with sustainability. That's one of the reasons I do this work. I know that's one of the reasons many of you in this room do this work. And those interconnections are part of holistic sustainability, which is a lens we use at Sustain Dane. It's how are we and how can we address environmental health, equity, and social well-being in a just economy together. The team has put together a short video about this past year. I hope that you will enjoy this. Many of you were part of creating these stories. And all of this happened with collaboration, inclusive leadership, and the power of the ripple effect. So this video is a celebration of us all and also a way to hopefully get you excited for future involvement. right. That's what's been going on the last year. Huge recognition for our board members. Please stand or raise your hand if you are a board member with Sustain Dane. Your service is greatly appreciated. And to our staff, same thing, staff. Many of you probably are standing already, but raise hand or stand, as well as to our interns. This team brings such positive energy and dedication and effectiveness to our programs each day. Thank you to this incredible group. Lastly, I'd like to share that we have artist T.L. Luke, who's created a custom piece of art for the Sustain Dane Summit. It's an interactive piece of art, and it's in the Grand Terrace. At the breaks and over lunch, you have the chance to add to the art with colorful elements of petals and raindrops. You can buy raffle tickets to win the art and also explore, of course, the other great exhibit tables. The complete art piece will be raffled off at the end of the day. The raffle tickets start at $10, and the winner will receive a personalized delivery of the piece later this month. We also are going to make poster-sized versions. And for a purchase of $100 of raffle tickets, you could receive a poster-sized version. The QR codes link to Venmo and credit cards, as well as there's an option for cash. There's also a possibility for a general donation. So please join us in helping add to the art as you look at what your vision might be for some of the prompts for a sustainable community. On to our program today. Our keynote is Dane Spratling. Dane is an award-winning environmental justice activist, storyteller, and public speaker. In 2019, she founded Girl Plus Environment, a national nonprofit organization designed to educate, engage, and empower Black and brown girls, women, and non-binary folk to stand up for environmental justice in their own neighborhoods. Dane's leadership in environmental justice and beyond is driven by her own lived experiences in Detroit, as well as the motivation to dismantle health, racial, and environmental inequities in other Black and brown communities alike. In addition, Dane has worked with cities, companies, and organizations globally to adopt meaningful, equitable processes that prioritize community and protect our planet. Please join me in welcoming Dane.
All right. Thank you so much, Claire, for that amazing introduction. I may have to bring you back with me to Atlanta for that introduction because that was very beautifully said. And thank you to all of you for being here and waking up at the crack of dawn with me to hear me speak today. I am so excited to be here in Wisconsin. This is actually my first time in Madison, and so far, yeah, I've gotten a really great welcome. So thank you. Yes. I came here from Atlanta, so I left the 80-degree weather to be here. So, but I'm very happy and excited to do so. So really appreciate you all welcoming me into this space and into this summit today. So I'm going to be spending the next couple of minutes here today talking a lot about my story, about narrative, about community engagement, and essentially what that has to do with our work every single day, and why we're here talking about this concept of sustainability. So I want to start off by sharing my story. So like I mentioned, I came here from Atlanta, but I was born and raised in the Midwest. I'm actually from Detroit. Shout out to the Michigan folks if there are any folks in here in the room. Yeah, all right. I always had been really just in love with being outside, especially those Detroit summers. They were fun. I was just one of those kids, my mom never had to tell me to go outside and play because I was already out there. I was outside from sun up to sundown playing with all the kids on the block, and that was before we had tablets, so that the kids, we were outside playing. And so I also really love science. And I think I really liked science because we got to really experiment with things. Unlike, reading and math and all those other things, I got to get my hands dirty and get in the environment and do work that I really cared about. And, one of the things that that happened to me one day when I was a kid. I was watching TV and the Save the Polar Bears commercial, it came on. Anyone know what I'm talking about? Okay, I got a few hands. In that commercial, that was when they were playing that song, In the Arms of the Angels, a very sad, persuasive song. And that reeled me in. I'm gonna be honest, whoever their marketing team was, they got me. Because as a kid, I was distraught. I was so sad. I was watching these beautiful polar bears ultimately on the ice caps melting. And it made me very sad. And I said, well, who's sticking up for the animals? Who's sticking up for the planet? Where are their voices? And I didn't see that. And so what I decided to do, I was like, I want to dedicate the rest of my life to save those polar bears and save all of the other animals on the planet. Like that was going to be my thing for the rest of my life. And so I started taking all these classes around environmental policy and AP science, and I started reading up on different books. There was a book particularly called Ishmael, I believe by Daniel Quinn. Okay, I see some head nods. That's a powerful book. So write that down if you haven't heard of it. Again, it's called Ishmael. And it was really meaningful to me because it really gave me just that perspective of ecology and this really holistic view and how we view the environment. So naturally, I said, well, I'm going to college and I'm studying environmental policy. I kind of dropped the science side of things because I was like, well, this is a little difficult for me. I was like, I'm gonna do the policy stuff. So I went to undergrad, I studied environmental policy in Ohio and had all these different internships, and it was all great. But one particular experience that stood out to me the most was when I had an internship with the West Michigan Environmental Action Council. And this was an amazing and life-changing experience for me. So I was originally hired on to really work at the intersection of energy policy and health. And so that was really my first exposure to this concept of intersecting health and environmental issues. And so it was really interesting because I essentially served as a translator, translating all these long policies and state bills into lay terms so that audiences knew what energy had to do with health. So I had to do a lot of research. And basically, what I found was very different for me. I didn't know that there was even that much of a relationship between energy and health. And so one of the things that really stuck out to me was this concept of asthma. And what I ended up learning was that really Black and Hispanic kids were really 2 times more likely to be hospitalized for asthma. And you know, as a kid growing up in Detroit, either you had asthma yourself or you knew 2 other people who had asthma. Anyone in this room have asthma or know someone who has asthma? Yeah, I think we can probably all write 2 hands up right there because yeah, that's the truth. And so it was so normalized. It was like, oh, well, like everyone has asthma. But I didn't realize people were getting hospitalized for it. I didn't realize that there was a correlation between asthma and sick days and missed days of school, therefore impacting people's education levels. And the fact that people and parents had to stay home from work, take off of work, because their kid had an asthma attack and had to go to the ER and pay ER bills, which we know is expensive. And so I was really curious. I said, wow, all of this from asthma? A health issue that I thought was so minor, so small at the time, which really isn't in hindsight. And you're probably wondering, well, what did this have to do with the work that I was doing around energy, around environmental justice, and really around the environment? And this was actually my very first exposure to the term environmental racism, which is basically thinking about the fact that different people are disproportionately exposed to things in our environments that impact our health, impact our well-being, and most predominantly, these are frontline communities, marginalized communities, those who are migrant workers, low income. And I said, wow, there's a relationship here. And the relationship was that Black Americans are exposed to 1.5 times more of sooty pollution at large, and it has tons of health impacts. So again, that asthma here, heart disease, lung cancer, all of those things that were essentially connected to this concept of environment and health. And I didn't realize it at first. And I said, wow, I'm focusing so much on this environment. I just got into this work to save the polar bears. I didn't think about the people in the environment. I was thinking about saving the polar bears. So I said, all right, well, I've got to learn more about this health side of things. I got to figure out what these people are talking about. So I decided to go and get my master's, which what landed me in Atlanta. I ended up going to Emory and getting my MPH, Master's of Public Health, because I felt like, all right, I know this environmental stuff. I'm all bought into this sector, but I have to learn about what's going on in the health space. And the reason was that because that summer during my internship, I went home after that and I would try to talk to my friends, my family, everyone in my space. I think I actually went on Facebook and went on a rant and said, you guys, we need to care about the environment. We need to care about sustainability. It's impacting us. It's not just the plants. It's not just the earth and the animals. It's our people too. And in hindsight, my family, my friends, they were listening to me, but they were not hearing me. And so oftentimes my mom, I would try to bring these conversations to the dinner table and talk about, we need to do this, and we need to fight for climate change, and we need to advocate and stand up for ourselves and be at these decision-making tables. And my mom goes, Diamond, that's not dinner table conversation. And I can't even tell you how frustrated I was at the time hearing that. I'm like, I can't believe them. Why are you not caring about the environment, about climate, sustainability? And really, environmental justice has everything to do with the food on our plates. It has everything to do with the dinner tables, right? But I just wasn't doing a good job at messaging about it. I was talking energy grid, this, polar bears, that, sustainability, and I just think ultimately they were very overwhelmed, to say the least. So I was like, I gotta go to school. I have to learn about this health element, because what I learned is that health angle is very persuasive. We all have health. And so it's a bit easier to really communicate that to our audience sometimes. And so basically I said, I gotta shift the narrative. I gotta change the way we talk about these issues that we care so much about. And that is actually what landed me to start Girl Plus Environment, which again is a national nonprofit created to empower Black and brown women to stand up for climate and environmental justice in their own neighborhoods. And when I say environmental justice, I mean the meaningful involvement of environmental conversations, decisions, equitable solutions, everything, ensuring that we are not only at those decision-making tables, but when we are at those tables, we feel confident, we feel empowered to be able to say something and do something and to be a part of this work. So that is what I ended up doing. I said, we've got to shift the way we talk about these things. I couldn't go to my community and talk about energy grids and clean energy. I had to make it meaningful for them. And what I think this really shows is that the stories we tell matter, and how we tell those stories matter. Go back once. And you're probably wondering, well, what does narrative, what does that really have to do with my work? Why do I need to care about sharing my narrative? Well, the first is that those narratives, those stories, that's what really frames and shapes this movement. We have to think about those different dominant narratives when they talk about sustainability. Are we talking about hugging trees? Are we talking about saving the polar bears? What exactly are we talking about in this space? And understanding and making sure that this is resonating with our audience and with our community. But the other piece here is that our individual stories, they're more powerful than the data. Yes, we love our numbers. I'm a researcher myself. I love my numbers and my data and everything else. That scientific side of things really gets us in, right? We hear sea levels are rising by this %. We hear this, we're at this amount of extinction. We need to reach this by 2040. So, those numbers really bring us in, right? But it's the stories It's the individual, personalized stories that we hear from people, that we hear from our neighbors for why they got into this work or why it's so critical for them that they are advocating for environmental or climate justice. It's the stories that really move the needle and move people in this space. But the other side of things is understanding that when it comes to decision making, when it comes to empowering our audiences, it's those stories. We have to engage them. We have to make sure that voices are heard in this sector and that we're being very intentional about the narratives that are being told around sustainability, around the environment, around climate justice. It's all connected, and that's the story that we have to tell, the intersectionality of it all. Because yes, it's about sustainability, but it's also about health, it's about economic development, it's about businesses thriving, it's about social justice, everything else, housing, all of it. But we have to tell that narrative. I think I went past one. Okay, did go past one. But we have, right? We have told those narratives. I mean, we went from Al Gore back in the day with our data, our graph. I was a huge Bill Nye the Science Guy first. Anyone else? All right, yeah, I see some hands here. But now we talk about the relationship between environments and BIPOC communities. We talk about amplifying and uplifting the voices of youth because Gen Z they're not playing about the environment and they're ready to hold us accountable. We also went, like myself, talking about icebergs and polar bears to really talking about what's going on in our own backyards and really having control about what we are exposed to every single day. Those are the narratives that are moving us. From conservation and wildlife to human impacts, and don't get me wrong, all of these topics are equally important. Whether you are advocating for the environment because you care about wildlife and conservation or you care about the people that are in it, because we are all on one planet and our environment impacts all of us. So I want to share a framework with all of you. Anyone heard of the Marshall Gans story of self, us, now? Okay, we got a few hands. I'm always curious how many people kind of know about that framework. So this is one of my favorite frameworks of all time. And it kind of helps us to really figure out what our stories are, what our narratives are, and how do we communicate it to our audience. So we have to figure out our story of self, our story of us, and our story of now. And I'm going to spend the next couple of slides really walking through it because I think it'll really help us to figure out how do we talk to our communities or our audiences, whoever that may be, about the issues we care most about. I want to start off with our story of self. So our story of self really gets at that personal narrative, figuring out, why do you care about this work? What brought you here to this summit today? Why are you so passionate that you get up every single morning and you go do this specific job? Why is that so important to you? And this is probably arguably one of the most important parts of this concept because before we can turn around and ask someone to sign our petition, to take this action, to submit public comment, show up to a hearing, we have to get back right with ourselves and we have to figure out, why do we do this work in the first place? The next part of this framework is our story of us. And that basically involves figuring out what those shared narratives are between yourself and the audience whom you're trying to mobilize. And again, your audience could be community members, your colleagues, people at other businesses, cities, states, whoever that may be. But you need to figure out what are those shared values? What is that experience that we both went through together? Like, did we go to college together? Did we grow up in the same neighborhood? Did we experience the same catastrophic event last year? What are those shared narratives and how can we use that to really bring ourselves together? Just like we're all here in this space, I think we can probably all agree that we all care about sustainability to some extent, right? Okay, if not, the exit is there. No, I'm totally kidding. Totally kidding. So yeah, that's our story of us here. And our last part of this Marshall Gans framework is our story of now. And I'm going to argue that this is probably one of the hardest things to really communicate and relate to people, because so the story of now basically helps you to communicate the urgency behind the message you are trying to share. Why is it so pressing? Why do I need to take action and sign this petition today? Why can't I wait next year to get involved in sustainability? Why can't we start our sustainability plan in 2050? Those are the questions that we have to answer. But the reason why this story of now is so difficult for many people is because we have a lot of pressing issues going on in the world right now, and I think we can all agree with that. So it's ultimately, it's difficult, it's hard to convey that message of, yeah, your thing's important, but I need you to advocate for sustainability right now. And so we really have to do a great job at just communicating that story of now. And I think this was probably one of my biggest things in my story is I was going to my family and my friends, asking them to care about the energy grid and sustainability, but they were just trying to put food on the table. They were just trying to pay for the bills, to protect us as kids. And so it was very difficult for me to communicate that urgency of climate change, of taking action on the environment. And that is our story of self, us, and now. And so what I want to do is shift gears a little bit and give you all the opportunity to actually talk with the individuals among your groups at your tables to figure out what your story of self is, your story of us, and your story of now. And so basically, I want you to think through this first question of, when did you start caring about sustainability? Think back to whether it was your childhood, whether you just started last week, whatever the case may be. Think about what that moment was for you. And then we're going to come back and talk about who shares those values. What are the similarities or collective experience that you have with individuals in your audience? And then we're going to talk about the hard part, which is that story of now. And then we'll share what is the urgency behind climate change, behind sustainability, behind taking action today. And why do we need to take action now? So what we're going to do is I'm going to give folks 3 minutes to just really think about this yourself, because I know these are big questions. We could spend a whole lecture on each question. Think amongst yourselves. Then we're going to take an additional 10 minutes for folks to just kind of talk in your tables. And then we'll come back and share out, and we'll get some volunteers to share out with the group. Does that sound good for folks? All right, cool. I got some thumbs up. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start this timer for about 3 minutes. Maybe we can get some background music in the background, but let me go ahead and get this started. All right, you are officially on the clock. Oh, thank you. I love the song choice. 2, 3. Am I good on time? Am I good on time? Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure. I was like, am I good on time? Okay, cool. All right, thank you. Got about 2 minutes left on thinking to yourselves, and then you all can go ahead and share in your groups too. right, I know some folks have begun sharing amongst your group, so we're gonna take 10 minutes to go ahead and continue that. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this timer for 10. Oopsies. we have about 3 minutes left, just so y'all are aware in our conversations. Just listening in.
And then also, again, that's, I think that's the hard part. It's like, it's not, what do you do on the way? You have to change a lot of things before you actually change them. I think you play things that way.
All right, we are getting ready to wrap up our first discussion. Hopefully you all have been having some great conversations, and I hate to cut anyone off because these conversations have been really great so far. So maybe we give everyone 1 more minute to just wrap up your sentence. All right. Are we ready to come back? Somewhat? Okay. Awesome. I feel like you all have been having some really great conversations, at least from what I was able to listen in on. So I hope just being able to share your story of self, us, and now has been really fruitful for you, because it's been really great to just listen in and learn about the work that y'all are doing and really what brought you here into this space. There's so many different perspectives, architects here, people in retail, sustainability, fashion, and just bring here in this space for the same shared goal and mission, I think is just really beautiful to see. So what I want to do is give a few folks the opportunity to actually share publicly with the larger group. So maybe we can have a volunteer who would like to share your story of self with us. And I think we have some microphones. I think Lorenzo have okay. We can bring a microphone for you so you don't have to come up on stage. But do we have a volunteer who would like to share your story of self? Oh, yes, we have a volunteer here in the back. Oh, thank you so much. Oh yes, we have someone bringing the microphone. Go ahead.
Hey everyone, I am Brandy Grayson, CEO of Urban Triage. And hey.
Yes.
So I would like to share that my desire and just my understanding of what was needed in the world started at UW in a zoology class. So the professor was talking about how pesticides and chemicals impact our hormones and our receptors and literally change genders, like what happens inside frogs and things. And I was like, what is this, right? And how it impacts our food. And that's when the aha moment happened. But then when Flint happened, I said, oh my God, like something really needs to give. And then I still didn't do anything. And then when the jet conversations around F-35s happened, I said, oh, we have to do something, because then I became more familiar about the impact in in low income and vulnerable populations community, and how everything always disproportionately impact people known as Black and other people of color, right? So that's when the work started. And Urban Triage works with different groups to do community engagement sessions to teach people about environmental justice. And we're working on getting funding so we can do more. So that's when it started for us. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Brandy, for sharing. And you'll have to send me the link for those earrings you have on too, because those are super cute. I think we have another volunteer here in the back. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Good to see you, Brandy. My name is Syed Abbas. I was former council president of City of Madison. I'm a director of education training with local nonprofit Slipstream. So my story is very similar to yours from childhood. So I grew up in Pakistan. So when I was growing up, we used to have, you do a boring for a fresh water 100 feet down. So that was like when I was 9-year-old. When I was close to 14, 15, to get the clean water, you go down up to 400 feet. So because of the increase of population, lack of rain, the water level decreased. But there's also another issue on hand, which was as the economic process grow, there are factories in developing countries, they are not regulated, there's no wastewater plants. So the dirty water also go in your creek, into your lakes. So you can still get water at 250, 200 feet, but it's extremely dirty. To get the filterized water, you have to go really deep, dive deep into the earth. So that's where my curiosity as a kid started. Why? The question, why this is happening? What is the reason behind it? And that curiosity took me all the way here into United States. And I also, that environmental justice situation in developing country, they are not limited to developing country. It's also happening same in United States at the same time. We can see PFAS contamination, which is impacting our drinking water. We can see environmental justice situation, Brandy just mentioned, on F-35, which disproportionately impact Black and brown and low-income people close to airport. So from policy standpoint, we develop policy, we educate, advocate, and I think it's really important for us to keep pushing the envelope and really making sure we educate and develop the policies and collaborate to achieve common goals.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your personal story. And it's really amazing to see how the curiosity of while we're kids kind of impacts the work that we do as adults. So thank you again for sharing. Maybe we can get one more volunteer to share either your story of us or your story of now. Do you have any brave souls want to volunteer? Oh yeah, go ahead. Have a volunteer here in the front. Oh, thanks.
I can talk really loud.
Oh yeah, you're good.
It's a very local story of us. I was sharing at the table. When I was working in conservation organizations here in Wisconsin, I started to learn about native plants and the benefits that they bring. And so, also being very lazy, I decided that I would turn my yard into a small native prairie so I don't have to mow or rake or do anything like that. So I now have a prairie, and as I was doing research about that and learning more about it, I ran into the Xerxes Society, and they have these little signs you can put in your native prairie saying pollinator habitat and what it's all about and why, so people don't think you just have a messy yard. So I planted one in my yard, and then in the 12 or so years since then, on my 2-block street area, at least 4 of my neighbors have since put in those signs and put in those yards. So it was a very local story of us sharing values, collective experiences, and building that little sense of community. And I didn't really have to do anything except for plant, which I love doing, and put in a sign that other people could read. So it wasn't like I was door knocking or doing anything like that. It was just very passive, and I don't know. We'll see how many more get planted.
Wow. That's awesome. I really love that example because it seems like so simple, right? But very effective. Just like you say, you don't have to put in a lot of effort, door knocking, all of those things. You just put up a sign. And sometimes those are the things that are most effective, right? People see your behavior and what you're doing, and they want to do the same. So thank you for sharing. So what I want to do is transition us a little bit because, yes, our narratives, our stories, they are so important. They bring us in. They keep us going. But we have to make sure that we're being very intentional in the individuals, the audiences, the communities who we're bringing into this space as well. And that brings me to this concept of meaningful community engagement. Community engagement is a ceaseless and iterative process. We can't rush it. We can't do it overnight. Hell, we can't even do it over a couple of months. If you've done community engagement, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not easy at all. It's not meant to be easy. It's hard. It's very hard and stressful. But guess what else? It's important. It's very important, in fact. So I want to talk about the fact that we have to bring in community into our work, into this space, into sustainability conversations, decisions, solution, and everything else. Oh yeah, that deserves a clap, right? So I want to talk about this framework, and this was actually adapted from Facilitating Power. Rosa Gonzalez is an amazing person. And there's this spectrum of community engagement, because what is community engagement, right? We don't really know the best ways to always engage our community. And that looks different, and who your community is different. It depends on your work and who you're trying to involve and engage. But there's different processes in here. We went from ignoring, meaning denying all interactions or engagement at all for community, which don't recommend. 0 out of 10, don't recommend that. Red flags. But then we also said, well, okay, let's inform community. So that's us going and saying, hey guys, we just did this great community or this great climate action plan. You should check it out. But if you don't, it's okay. But you can't say we didn't tell you. So that is the concept of informing community. I wouldn't really recommend that one either. It's not that good. But we could also consult our community. And so consulting, it gets a little bit better, and it's basically gathering information from community. So let's say we want to do a survey or an interview, or maybe we want to do some focus groups. So that's done as well, but sometimes that can look like we're extracting information from community without really giving anything back. And sometimes community doesn't even get compensated for their time or acknowledged for that. So that's better than informing and ignoring, but I think we can do even better. So there's involving. So basically listening to the needs, the assets, everything else that we hear from community. So taking that information from that research that you did and basically incorporating it into, say, your climate action plan, your sustainability plan, whatever it may be, which I think is really great process to be able to, and great steps to involve community into our work, right? But these last two here, I think, are even better. And the first one is collaborate. So co-creating with community, creating our community engagement plans, our climate action plans, really figuring out what is the best way for us to do this work and get involved and take meaningful action. So that is collaboration. And a lot of organizations and cities and states have done a really great job at doing that. And I'm going to share two quick examples as well. But the last one here, which I think people are a little bit still weary of doing it, and I don't see this as much as we should, but that is deferring to community. Because you know what? Community knows what's best for their own community. They are the experts in their community and what they see every day. Yes, we love those numbers and those stats and that research and that data, but there is nothing like personalized experiences and personalized data and information and experiences that community is able to share themselves. So I want to challenge us to start deferring to community because their knowledge, community knowledge, indigenous knowledge is valuable, it's powerful. So I want to share really quickly two examples of some of the work that I've been engaged in. So the first one is with SoCalGas in Southern California. So basically the utility company reached out to Girl Plus Environment and said, hey, we know you're connected with community. Help us create our community engagement plan. And so we're still very early in the process of that. But they've been doing some really great things. And ultimately, they're creating this community engagement plan to better figure out how or what barriers exist for their community to be able to adapt or just be resilient to climate change. And so I want to highlight some of the things that I think that they are doing pretty well so far. And the first one is that they are doing their homework. And that is what I would encourage everyone to do your homework. That means two things. The first, figure out what is already being done in your community. What have consultants, or what did the city, or what did the people who came before you, what did they do last year? Because if you go to community and say, hey, we want to know what you think about your parks, you're saying, well, we just told you what we thought about the parks like 3 months ago. You didn't talk to such and such. So doing your research and finding out what information is already out there. But also reaching out to community, doing those surveys, those interviews, getting that information, but being very intentional in that and compensating them for their time. But they've also been doing good as far as putting together this entire regional advisory committee. So that's what we're actually a part of. It's a bunch of community-based organizations, individuals and groups who are actually a part of the community, who they're trying to engage. And leaning on those community leaders there, people who already have that built trust, those relationships within their communities. And so that has been a really critical piece because maybe SoCalGas didn't have that relationship with the community, but they were able to lean on those leaders, those trusted partners, church leaders, organizational leaders, boys and girls clubs to really bring people in. And then the last thing is understanding that relationship building is critical. We can't do one-off community engagement plan and say, oh, we'll see you in a couple of years when we need the next plan. They're being very intentional of being and getting engaged and involved in the community, whether that was around going to different community events that already exist, showing up and making sure that they care, that it's known that they care about what's going on in that area. Another example of what we were a part of was the City of Atlanta's Department of Parks and Recreation's Activate ATL. And this was basically a 10-year comprehensive plan that I got to be a part of through my work at Bloomberg. And basically they were trying to figure out, well, what do we need to do to really improve the City of Atlanta's parks? And for those who don't know, Atlanta is a city in a forest. We say that about our city. And it is true, we have tons of trees, but most of the trees are privately owned, so in people's backyards, mostly in the city of Buckhead, which is a really affluent area. And the other thing is Atlanta has over 365 parks within the city boundaries. So we love our parks and we don't play about them at all. So it was really important for us to bring in community and for community to feel a part of this plan. It eventually became into a movement. And so I just want to quickly share out some of the things that they did really well. There were over 10,000 Atlantans who were engaged in the entire process of activating ATL, over 6,000 people engaged in the public meetings. Again, this was during COVID as well, so all of the meetings were virtual. They were hosted in English and in Spanish. We have a large Spanish-speaking population in Atlanta. We did surveys online, but then what we noticed is that many unhoused people use parks too. So we needed to get out into the parks and do physical surveys too. So we did surveys in person, and that was really helpful. Over 700 people attended the virtual meetings. And then we went out to the parks, did lawn signs, focus group sessions, public meetings, and everything else. This was a really, really great effort. This was not perfect, and by all means, no community engagement is perfect. We can always do better. But this was a great example of the city putting their foot down and really making an effort to co-create and build a movement and build an engagement plan and build a 10-year plan that essentially empowered community to take meaningful action and engage in this work. So with that, I want to have another discussion similar to before, but I want to hear from you. I want to learn more about your community and your engagement. And so what we're going to do is we're going to give folks 3 more minutes again to think to yourself, but this time these questions are a little different. So the first is, think about your community, who comprises of it, and what are the genuine approaches to fostering meaningful engagement and co-creation within your community. So that's the first question. The second question is, how can you maintain that momentum? Can you keep it going? Because just like I said before, community engagement is a ceaseless and iterative process. So there's no one and done. And how can you nurture enduring engagement and relationships? So we're gonna cue that music and do 3 minutes just to yourselves, and then we'll circle back and you can have the rest of the 10 minutes to kind of talk among your groups. We're good? All right, y'all still with me? Okay, great. skirt. Super cute. Yeah. Hello. Me? Yes, thank you. I love resources. Thank you.
Everything you're talking about.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad y'all are enjoying it. So.
Thank you so much.
Of course, of course. Thank you. All right, if you haven't already started sharing with your table, we're going to have 10 minutes to go ahead and start sharing. Okay. Hi, how are you doing? Good, good. Oops, let me turn this off. All right. Again, I hate to cut off these great conversations, but I do want to bring us back together slowly but surely. When y'all are ready, maybe we'll allow folks to finish up your sentence and then we'll come back. Awesome. All right. Time. Cool. So, if I could have everyone's attention, I know these conversations are so great. I'm like, I don't want to cut them off. I didn't want to leave that table back there with Aaron was talking about the great work that they were doing, but I got to come back up here. But I do want to allow maybe one or two people to share your response to either one of these prompts here. And I think we have a microphone going around. So if anyone would like to volunteer, any brave souls, to share the amazing community engagement work you've been doing, I'd love to have a volunteer. If not, I do know some folks I saw. Oh, we have a volunteer in the back.
Hi, thanks. I'm Jess Thompson. I am the Conservation and Education Curator at the zoo here, Henry Valley Zoo. So you want to come meet a polar bear, come on.
Yes.
But we talk a lot about community at the zoo. We're one of the few free zoos in the country, so we have all aspects of our community coming through. And we talk a lot about our neighbors and what do our neighbors look like and what do our neighbors need. That includes the example I shared with the table, which is working with the Bayview Foundation, a nearby neighborhood center and housing, low-income housing community. And during COVID, we actually ended up partnering with them to host basically an elementary school for their kids to come in during virtual schooling, get help, get childcare, get some food. And that was really eye-opening for us as we thought about what does our community need, not necessarily what do we want them to need. We might want to go show them animals or have them come to the zoo and have a tour, but what they really needed was childcare and schooling and food. And so if we can provide that, then it opens up the door to have this ongoing relationship that really is more about what can we do for each other than what can we prescribe for our neighbors.
Yes. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. I actually just heard really great things about the zoo this morning. Someone was like, yeah, you should go to the zoo. So thank you for volunteering. Could we maybe have one more volunteer? Yeah, right here in the front.
Hi, my name is Paul Schechter, and I was involved in a project on the east side of Madison called Save the Farm. 65 acres of land that the farmer just would not sell, and it was in his family for 175 years, and the city grew around it, so it was this green oasis. But the community could sort of see the writing on the wall and knew that it was going to turn hands soon because the old farmer died and his kids weren't interested in continuing. So I was involved in this group that was incredibly explosive. It was kind of this grassroots initiative that took on a mind of its own, and it really did embody the last two cards where you defer and you let the community come up with their own thoughts and ideas. And we raised $35,000 in GoFundMe, and which is peanuts to buy this thing, but that was enough to hire an architect and come up with a wonderful plan that included a 20-acre urban garden in the middle, surrounded by housing and net zero and car sharing and all these wonderful ideas that were totally created by the community themselves. And then we started to increase that to, well, how are we actually going to get control of this? So we created a community investment cooperative and got pledges for $1.4 million from folks that were saying, I can do 500, I can do 1,000. A few people said 10,000, and one or two said 50,000. So with hundreds of people combining all their money, it was quite substantial. And we got letters from like the Willie Street Co-op and from the neighborhood associations and other organizations that sort of could build upon the momentum that was being created. Finally, the county got involved and they contributed $500,000. So incrementally, we're working up and up. But unfortunately, we could never really get buy-in from the city of Madison, particularly planning staff, because they had their own predetermined vision for the farm, which was a grid network of roads and more housing and things like that. So that was what they were really interested in. And eventually, a developer came and they said, "We really love your vision. We want to be your partner." And they pretended kind of like they were wanting to partner with us, and then one day told us that they had put an offer on the farm and it gotten accepted, but we were still sort of part of it and we're going to contribute. So we asked and asked, okay, how can we contribute? And that never happened. And it's now, the momentum piece is really critical, because when you have a stoppage, the ceaseless point is important. You have to continue. And we just waited for the next step for the developers to tell us when we could do something. And they waited 12 months. So eventually the community moved on, and now it's going to be built with roads and buildings and whatnot. So it's both a success story and a story of missed opportunity.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much for sharing. And you'll have to tell us more about that fundraising strategy. It's $1.5 million. That was great. Kudos to y'all for doing that. All right, so I want to transition us, and thank you all again. I'm so happy that y'all had to have these valuable conversations, because just like Claire mentioned, that's why we're here today, to have these conversations, learn about why we can work, how we can work together, and why we're all here. So I hope that you all made a few new friends at your table, and will continue those partnerships as well and lessons learned. So before I head off for today's session, I want to share some key takeaways. And the first is, be intentional about the narrative that you want to tell. It is critical. Just like I shared in my story, I wasn't telling the right narrative. So you have to understand who your audience is and what narrative works best for them. But you also have to start with your story of self before we can even begin to ask community or ask your audience, your colleagues, whoever it may be who you're trying to mobilize in this work. You have to figure out why you do this work in the first place. And next, we gotta understand that numbers bring us in, but stories are the things that keep us here. Those are the things that keep us going, keep us motivated, give us hope, and uplift us in this space. This sustainability and climate work, it can get very draining. We can get sucked into the doom and gloom sometimes. But we have to listen to those stories and continue to share those stories and amplify voices, especially for individuals who have historically been unheard in this space. And also, stop looking at frontline communities as the victims and start looking at us as the solutions. We are not the victims here. We have so much knowledge, so much indigenous knowledge, so much personal experiences to give to this space. And the last thing that I want to mention is community development. Again, at the speed of trust, building that trust, taking our time to get to know our neighbors, get to know our community, and working collaboratively and deferring to them when it comes to the work that we are doing. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you for rocking with me this early in the morning. And thank you so much to the amazing people at the Sustain Dane team for having me. I'm so grateful to be here today. And I really hope that you found this conversation to be very fruitful here today. And I believe we also have a few minutes for maybe one or two questions, but we'll also have some time to kind of meet me over there if folks have questions during the break as well. So thank you again for having me. believe, do we still have a couple minutes for questions? Okay. All right, volunteer in the back.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Alex. I just had a quick question. How would you suggest people with, say, health conditions, such as I have a heart condition, how would you suggest being more sustainable in not only commuting, but also, like, say, in the summer, and staying cool and things like that? How would you suggest that to kind of happen more, if that makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you so much for your question. And I think this also just gets at the broader conversation of the daily things that we can or we cannot do when it comes to sustainability. I know there are a lot of expectations of, everyone needs to recycle or have compost or open the windows instead of turning on the air condition, but or being vegan, for example. But what we have to do is understand the privilege that comes with a lot of the things that we are asking people to do. Now, I'm not telling you don't do all those sustainable things, because the more people, the better. But we have to meet each other where we are. And I think particularly, for your situation, when we talk about the interrelationships between health and climate, there are significant implications. There are significant correlations and relationships between the two topics. I actually teach a course on that, side note. But I think what I would recommend is, do what is best for you for your health. Put your health first and understand that what you can do is great. And so maybe you're not able to consequently not turn on the air and open up the windows or go without heat or whatever the case may be. But that's okay, because in your circumstance, you're not able to do that, and that's fine. But there are other people out here who may not have that same health condition who can and should, and that gets at this broader conversation of equity. This is not an equality situation where everyone needs to do something the same equal way. We understand that some people can take bigger sacrifices and others cannot. And so recommending and understanding that, but maybe you can support and be more sustainable in other ways. Maybe you're recycling, maybe you are using a reusable water bottle, whatever the case may be, advocating about sustainability. But understanding how critical it is to really just take into context that some people can do and go above and beyond and be the most sustainable person out there, but others cannot. So hopefully that helped answer your question. Maybe time for one more question. Did I miss? Oh, go ahead.
Hi, thanks so much. My name's Lizzie. So you talk about moving at the speed of trust, but then I hear people who have already been involved in the conversation. They have a sense of urgency. Like, we can't slow down in order to build trust. And then folks who are on the other side of it saying it's essential. We cannot have this movement without including all voices. I was wondering if you have recommendations on how do we accelerate trust? What can we do to move that process along, but without forcing it?
Yes, that is an excellent question. And I think a lot of people have that question. I mean, a lot of times I get asked to do or support with community engagement for cities and states and just local government. And we're like, hey, we've got to get this grant deliverables done. We're on a timeline to get the clean action plan or the clean energy plan done by the end of the year. And so it's like, while we have these really short deadlines, we also got to understand, like, we have to move at the speed of trust, at the speed of community. So it's very difficult, and I think that's something that I'm still struggling with as well, to be completely transparent. But one of the ways that I've been trying to maneuver that is bringing in community leaders, bringing in people who already have that trust with community. So it's not for example, the utility company or the city who has to go and build that trust or build that relationship with the community, but having a liaison, someone who understands the technical side of things and what the city or the company is doing, but also someone who is very connected to the community. So I think leaning into those people, community organizers, community health workers, people who already have those relationships built, I think goes a long way. And does it shorten the process all the way? No, not at all. But I think it does help us move the needle just a little bit quicker because those relationships and that trust has already been built within the community. Hopefully that was helpful for you. All right, awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you all so much again. Of course, I'll still be over here and here the rest of the day if folks have questions, but appreciate your time for rocking with me today.
Thank you again, Diamond, for taking the time to share your story, provide us with some great discussion, and answer some of our questions. What a great way to open this Sustain Dane Summit 2023. Hi, everyone. Oh, yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Spencer Bierman. I am the Development and Partnership Manager here with Sustain Dane. Wanted to let you all know that next up is a break until 10:30. Please consider continuing this discussion afterwards. Diamond will be available for questions at the table next to the stage to talk more as well. If you had any more questions that had not been answered. She'll be joining us throughout the day, and there will be more connection opportunities coming. If you've not done so already, please stop by our fantastic art piece created by T.L. Luke in the Grand Terrace and add some of your own inspiration. It's wonderful. There's little flower petals that you add, and it's so much fun. And while you're there, you can purchase your raffle tickets for your chance to bring this art home or support Sustain Dane through donations. Again, we'll see you next at 10:30 in this room for our interactive climate roundtable. And after that, we will have some lunch and networking. Thank you again for joining us, and we look forward to a rest of a great day of programming.